Hi everyone and welcome to our session today on 2025 Learning Trends. I'm Helen Marshall, I'm the Chief Learning Officer at Thrive. We've got a stand just behind you if you haven't already seen it, and I'm joined today by the wonderful Beck Ford from Burger King UK, and I'll let Beck introduce herself.
Hi everyone, so I'm Beck. I look after the talent team and the inclusion strategy at Burger King. So Burger King, global brand, right? Everyone probably knows Burger King, thinks we've been around forever. Our business was born in 2017, just pre-pandemic. My role was introduced in 2021. So we are relatively new in terms of kind of our journey. Just to kind of caveat, because people are always shocked by that. We've met a few people today. Oh yeah, massive global brand, which obviously we are. So we've been on a bit of a journey. We introduced Thrive this year to kind of help us with our learning journey. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome, thanks Beck. What we're going to cover today, I think I always like to caveat when I deliver a session on learning trends that actually, yes, there's lots of stuff that's going on in the industry at the moment that's classed as hot topics or buzzwords, but I've delivered maybe 4 or 5 different trends talks over the past several years, and I always come back to rooting in the same things, which we'll talk about today. So I'll talk about some of the broader industry-wide things that are worth paying attention to that are probably going to end up as BAU for us, but ultimately what we need to be thinking about are some core areas that underpin everything we do within L&D, and I'm going to provide some of that context and some of that wider view of what's going on in the industry, and then Beck's going to provide some really tangible, practical examples of what they're doing within Burger King at the moment that makes it kind of all come to life for you. So hopefully that all makes sense as we go through the session today. Now, there's 3 things I think that we classed as trends at the moment, but that I think are worth really paying attention to at the moment, which are adaptive learning, data, and human skills. Now, none of these are particularly new things. I'd say potentially adaptive learning is becoming potentially more commonplace. However, as you can see, like, we've always been rooted in data and human skills. I just think it's even more important that we're focusing on these right now. And then what I'm classing as BAU for L&D, things that should be BAU and sometimes are for a lot of organizations, but at the same time are not really the focus for some teams. So that's linking back to business impact, it's linking to what a learning mindset looks like within your organization, and ultimately how you can bring inclusion into everything that you do within the work that you're doing in your organizations. So if these aren't things that you're already focusing on, that's okay. I think it's just worth starting to think about these things now, but I'm hopeful as well that a lot of you will be nodding your heads thinking, yeah, we're doing this, and that's great. So we'll dig into all of those as we move through the session today. Let's start off with business impact. Now, I'm going to talk you through a model that Laura Overton developed called the L&D Value Spectrum, which I think is really important to help you frame where you might be on your journey at the moment. The people at the back are definitely not going to be able to read this, so bear with me while I talk you through it. I'm wondering if people at the front can even see what's on the screen. But ultimately, what we're seeing is that L&D teams are often starting over there on the left-hand side of this diagram, thinking about things like engagement metrics, efficiency focus, perceived value. So things like bums on seats, how many people have completed this training, this is going to save me time and resource, or a net promoter score or CSAT scores, things that are kind of easy to track, the vanity metrics that people often talk about. And actually what we want to be focusing on are the things on the right hand side, so things where value is placed on business outcomes, so performance and talent, time to competency, speed to adoption, skills levels, things like that, things that have an impact on performance within your business, ultimately feeding into a broader picture of what your culture looks like within your organization. So I'm just going to do a quick hands up in the room of where you think you are on your journey. So are you over there on the 1, 2, 3 side of things, the engagement metrics, the efficiency focus, the perceived value? Because I think that's quite common if you are. You can see a few nods of the heads, a few hands going up, yeah. And then how many of you are already over here on the performance and talent focus, on the impact side of that perceived value? A few nods, yeah. Less hands this time though. So, and I think it's worth mentioning that without that you can't really get to this. So, you've got to start the journey somewhere, but ultimately if you're not thinking about what those elements are that you need to drive the needle on, you're not going to be able to focus on them. So I think it's a good place to start by thinking about what is the business impact that you're having, and how do you design whatever it is and create whatever it is within your business in order to do that. And I'll pass over to Beck to talk about this a bit more.
Yeah, so we're not fully over on the right hand side, definitely not. We are probably going back this year, actually, and focusing on some of the efficiency side. Now we've got Thrive, we can be a bit more efficient with how we do things and reduce our time to train, etc. However, as I say, I joined the business in 2021, and one of the appeals for me was to work for a global brand and start off a talent development team from scratch, which I thought was super exciting. Blank piece of paper, oh my God, amazing, dream. And the reality was it was hard, obviously. However, my first meeting with my CEO, who is amazing, I asked him, I said, like, what do you value? What do you want to kind of, what do you really believe in, Al? And the first thing he said was fun, and that just filled me with joy, because who doesn't want to have fun at work? And that's exactly what he said. And he said, we've been a small startup. There was 4 sites when they bought the business in 2017. I joined when we had about 142. We're now just under 300 sites. So that's within 3 years we've gone from the 140s to 300. So it's been rapid. But we want to keep that startup mentality. We want our teams to have fun and enjoy coming to work. So that was fab. Obviously, we're a private equity-backed business, so results are important, right? Everyone needs to make money. We need to get the results in. And yeah, the fire red energy came out there, and that's absolutely fine. That's what you expect of a CEO. And he wants these people to be really intellectually curious. So because we have that startup mentality, it's not everyone's got the answers. It's what are other people doing? What's the industry doing? What can we adapt? How can we move quickly? And when I asked what he wanted from me, he said, we need agility. We're opening all these sites. We're acquiring smaller franchisees and bringing them into the owned by estate. So agility was really, really key. Obviously, my role was created to grow our people. Prior to me starting, there was amazing technical, operational training, as everyone would expect. But other than that, there was no talent development courses or anything. We weren't kind of sure how we got from crew member to restaurant manager, other than one kind of bit of key training, which was mandated. So growing people was really important. The same for our head office. So there's going to be lots of references to Whoppers, because obviously we're Burger King, so our head office is called Whopper Support. So if I say Whopper Support, that's what it is, head office teams. And then the final thing was to make it kind of simple. So again, blank piece of paper, but we don't want to overcomplicate things. I think sometimes in L&D we can talk about kind of complicated models and that kind of thing, but we have 70 nationalities work for us. Whatever we land needs to land correct first time. So the mission at the beginning was all about kind of getting that consistency. So clarity of expectation and how can I get consistency. We've had different franchisees doing different things. So that was my mission, hence why we got to kind of into last year, and I was like, right, now we've got this massive team, we need to really start thinking about how we can communicate with everyone, hence why we brought Thrive in to really help drive that message. So that's kind of the background to where we're at, really.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to hone back in on what you were saying there about your CEO saying, I want people to have fun, I want people to enjoy coming to work. That brought you joy inadvertently, but also, how do you bring that to the people within the business as well? And I think this links into something that's fundamental to the way that learning can be successful within an organization in terms of mindset. So you're really lucky that you have a CEO who sounds like he already has that mindset and embodies that kind of learning mindset in everything that he does. And that makes your job a lot easier, because I think if you don't have someone who thinks in that way, who can see the value in what learning is going to bring from the get-go, it can be more challenging. And I appreciate not everyone in the audience is going to have a CEO like yours, but I think what you can think about is how people can adopt a learning mindset within your organization. So we've got growth mindset over on the left-hand side, which I think is often thinking about past events and how you learn and grow from those, and how you treat everything as an opportunity to reframe what you're doing. Whereas a learning mindset is thinking more about that curiosity angle, about how you can be adaptive to the situation in front of you, and then be future focused in terms of thinking about what knowledge gaps you might have and you might want to fill. And I think that's where it's really important to call out the difference and think about how you can create environments where learning mindset thrives within your organization. And I think, your CEO is a really good example of, if it's top down, makes it a lot easier, but you can also think about how you do that and support that within your businesses as L&D teams as well. Now, I think I'm going to really hand over to Beck for this one to talk about inclusion, because it's so fundamental to everything that you and your team are doing within Burger King. But ultimately, this is something, again, that we've spoken about in every other session that we've delivered on learning trends previously, is actually how are you designing in an inclusive way that makes sure your values, the way that people can show up to work, the way that people feel included at work is key to everything that you do. And yeah, I'll pass over to Beck to really bring that to life from a Burger King perspective.
Helen's going to try and keep me in check here as well, because I could talk about inclusion for ages, because I think there's so much that we've done. We're by no means kind of finished on this journey. As it says, spoiler alert at the end, it's always evolving. But for us, the starting point with our inclusion journey was really, what does the data tell us? So back in 2021-22, we brought a group of consultants in from Beck and Partners to kind of deep dive into our business, look at all the data, all the the promotions, what's our makeup of our teams. They did lots of listening groups, exec down to crew members, weekend, part-time, etc. So we had loads of data coming from that angle. Also at the time, thinking back, I know I hate it when people talk about the pandemic and things, but actually we were coming out of the pandemic. I joined in 21. The impact of Brexit on our workforce was massive. So we had a mass exodus of leavers. So I think in 2021, we lost 2,500 people. I'm looking at Rachel. 2,500 people, which is a huge amount of our workforce were leaving, which was really scary for us. So actually we needed to understand the reasons they were leaving and what we could do to kind of stop that losing that talent. And interestingly as well, it wasn't necessarily long tenure. We were losing kind of half the people were leaving in the first 3 months. So we knew we had opportunities there. So we had that piece of work going on. We had an internal working group looking at all the, what's the data saying, what are our teams saying, what can we do, what are our managers saying. And at the same time, because there was a real challenge with recruitment, we were working with an external company called Chatter, some of you might have worked with, so looking at our EVP and what do our teams think the great things about working with us are, and then we kind of landed on our people promise pillars, which, as I say, we love the Whopper. So our people promises of whopping support, whopping fun and whopping opportunities were kind of landed on us. That's what we're about as a business. So we had all this data, so it's great having all the data right, but then I was like, we've just got so much, like how are we going to bring this to life and what does it actually physically mean to our teams? So we worked with the exec and then we worked with our senior ops team and we pulled together some people engagement sessions, not rocket science, but real kind of good, tangible, full day workshops that we ran between ourselves and operations. So nobody likes it when the people team come in and tell everyone how to manage the teams and what to do. It wasn't about that. It was about us working together, sharing the data, and making some action plans together. And then also on those days as well, bear in mind what I've said about the makeup of the teams, kind of teams brought together from different businesses. We needed a standard of expectations of behaviours as well that represented our kind of people pillars. So we focused on inclusion, active listening and empathy were the three kind of human skills, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but they were the things we wanted to really nail with our restaurant managers. So we kind of rolled that out and then that was our starting point. So then we've been embedding those messages through the last couple of years. So Rachel joined us in January. Rachel works really kind of closely with Thrive. We look at our monthly engagement campaigns. We've celebrated Disability Pride Month, mental health awareness. We're doing women's health this month. So what we're trying to do is just gently kind of keep these messages, just kind of drip feeding them through, nudging our managers just as a gentle reminder and just making it become kind of our everyday norm, if you like. Now, we're part of the British Retail Consortium, 6 pledges of DE&I, which I'm sure probably more of you in here that are as well. And if you are, then you'll know this year, as part of their annual inclusion survey, they ran an inclusion score for the teams that work. So actually, this survey is in its 4th year, and it's brilliant that businesses talk now about social mobility and talk about, they publish the results and things, but what they were saying is that's what boards and executive team tells us we're doing, but what is the lived experiences of our teams? So luckily they partnered with Workel and we introduced Work part of our engagement survey in July this year. So I was able to pull the data from the 12 questions and look at what does that mean to us at Burger King. So we scored 7.7. It's not amazing. I'm sharing it because, like I say, we're not perfect and we're on a journey. The BRC average was actually 7.1, so we were above the BRC average. However, the really great information in that survey for me was there's two things we scored 8.4 on, which was I have a great relationship with my line manager, and I have the information, knowledge and training to do my job well. So they scored 8.4. So again, that's something great for us to take away. Flip side, I think if I was to say to you, where do you score lowest in your engagement surveys, probably the majority of you would probably say pay and recognition. That was the same for us. So again, I'm not ignoring it. It's work we need to do. So I think the good thing for us now, we'll be running this survey every 6 months, and we'll have a data point we can keep track these scores, and really work on our managers to be more inclusive, so our teams actually feel that they're being treated in the right way. There's lots of other things we do. I'm probably running out of time on this one now, but we pulled together. What do we do? Sorry, yeah. In July this year, we worked with the Shaw Trust. We've got signed off our disability confident employer level 2, so we've had that. Plus, we've worked with the DWP to look at kind of helping social mobility and get people into work that may have been out of work for 2-3 years, or returning mums to the workplace. And we've done additional work with Street League, UK Youth, looking at employability schemes. So grab me at the end if you want any more information. I better shut up on this one.
No, that's awesome. Thanks, Beck. And I think, do talk to Beck about inclusion if you're interested at the end, because there's so many interesting stories coming out of the work that you're doing. So I think ultimately what we've seen there is that, how do you focus in on what matters to the business, understanding what's important to your CEO, but what's important to your people? How do you think about learning mindset within your organization? How do you encourage environments that foster that type of thinking? And then how do you bring it back to inclusivity at the end of the day? And how do you make sure that is something that is top of mind, from even if that's from simply from the design perspective, or how does it affect people and talent within your organizations as well? Now, to get a little bit more specific, in terms of those trends that we spoke about right at the beginning, I think we've kind of touched on quite a lot of the things that interlink these anyway, in terms of those broader BAU type things that we've been talking about, which just shows that they are worth linking into those things. So adaptive learning is something that is not necessarily new. People have been thinking about how you personalize experiences and create experiences that adapt to you as an individual or a group of people for a long time. However, what I would say is that with the influx of new technology, with AI, it's becoming ever closer to a better experience for people ultimately at the end of the day. So we're not going to talk about AI really in this talk. I just think it's worth framing in that way, that it's closer. A lot of people are on a journey of thinking about the tech that they utilize and how it can create more adaptive experiences. And that's certainly the case, I know, for Burger King, but also for a lot of people, I imagine, in the audience as well. But what happens when you are able to create more personalized experiences that adapt to individuals is that ultimately you're creating a competitive advantage for yourself. Now, that's really important, particularly for L&D teams specifically, in terms of understanding how you communicate your value to the wider business, but also as a business, how are you then able to show you have a competitive advantage? And I know, Beck, you mentioned your MVP there, and how you can attract people to your business in the first place, and that can become a competitive advantage as well.
And yeah, we've touched on it. We've not done loads of work on this. I think for Rachel and I, we've been discussing it. Kind of where we are excited having the Thrive platform now is looking at that kind of reduction in that time to competency, because that's a real good business metric for us with our growth plans. That's going to help us massively. I'm most excited about compliance, having engaging compliance that suits the individual. It's not my favourite part of my job, it's an essential part of my job. Probably not alone with that either. But yeah, that's kind of some of the kind of key things that I think we'll be looking at for 2025.
And I think some of the examples here in terms of reduction in time to competency and increased retention, I think are probably going to be quite impactful, thinking about how you're linking in again to that broader organizational perspective, but also how you're going to track those things in terms of the data that you have available. So if through personalization, through adaptive experiences, you can start to show that you're reducing a time to competency, or you're actually increasing retention and having an impact in that regard, that's amazing. So, you know, there's a real opportunity and positivity around any technology that's able to do that for people, which is hugely exciting. And that links us in nicely to the second point around data. It's the building block of everything that you should be doing within your businesses. What data do you already have available to you? If you don't already have the data, how do you find the data? How do you make those relationships in order to gather the data as well? So I think there's an opportunity here for people to either upskill in data analysis or bring in those members to your team that are already skilled in that area. We're seeing a lot more data analysts, there we go, appearing on L&D teams, and I think it's really important to think about, you know, how you can communicate and storytell with data. Again, something we've spoken about previously, but ultimately think about how you build those relationships to gather the data from across the business. And I know, Beck, that's something you want to talk about.
Yeah, so I'm just going to talk about kind of one of our kind of main areas of growth when I joined was the NROs, as we call them, so new restaurant openings. I was on my induction day one, I didn't have a clue what an NRO was, but it's a new restaurant opening. So yeah, as you can imagine, anything that requires a capex spend, and you've got all eyes on, so you've got your master franchise, RBI looking at it, you've got your investors, Bridgepoint, looking at the performance. They were a massive area of growth. Now, back in the day, we would recruit a fully external team of managers to open an NRO. As you can imagine, that brought its challenges, because once the team might be training in different sites, when you bring them all back together, do they know what they're doing? So we'd have very kind of soft launches for our new restaurant openings. Unfortunately as well, we had kind of high turnover. So in some sites, the turnover was horrifically about 150% within that first 12-month period. It wasn't great. And, you know, collectively as a business, we've worked on a lot of things. And so when Helen and I were talking about this, I said, this isn't just a click my fingers, we've done it. This has been a trial things, learn, keep going and keep nudging it forward. But we did look at our processes in terms of how do we do these restaurant openings, and we worked with the finance team to look at different kind of pay structures and reward packages. We set an internal target last year to pull in, so every NRO now is a minimum 50% internal managers, which we've kind of worked with the business to get to. I took the talent acquisition team into my team last year, so we've combined the talent acquisition and talent development team, so now we look at talent as a whole. It's brought a real joined up focus, and that's been a bit of a game changer for us, to be honest. Really helped us kind of with those numbers. We've done loads of things. We now remote manage. Now we've got Thrive. We can, Bal, who works on my team, as our operational trainer, she has opened all our NROs remotely with the teams. So she's upskilled the team to a certain level. We've done training for success. What sites are we training? How are they training? So she manages all that now. And then the beauty of having Thrive for us is we can now see where is everyone on their journey. And I'm really pleased to say last week we opened our site in Northwich, which was a record breaking. We couldn't believe it actually yesterday in the town hall. It was amazing the figures that we had in there. And when I was speaking with Lisa, who's head of our NRO project team, she actually said to me that what we have now is we're just bold with our openings. We've just come to we've got to a position where the teams are really equipped, they're really competent, really quickly. We don't soft launch, we open with full opening hours, we put home delivery in faster than we would have done previously. And actually, in terms of bottom line profitability, if I was to hazard a guess, I'd probably be saying every NRO we open, which I think we're due to open 20 next year at the minute, will probably be 10 grand a week better per NRO for the work that we've done in terms of pulling all this information together, remote managing, kind of all the work we've done. Again, I could probably talk about this for ages, but I better shut up on that one.
Yeah, I think it's a great story in terms of that upskilling piece and thinking about how you're understanding what that data is telling you and how you can then link it to NROs using your language and showing that, the business impact of creating people who are better equipped to do their jobs faster, and therefore that can have, figure to be determined, 10 grand per opening impact on the business, which is incredible. And then I think something that's really important to think about, particularly in the wake of new technology and AI, is what are we doing to enhance human skills within our businesses? And now this is obviously something that we hear spoken about all the time, which is why it's classed as a trend, but actually it's not necessarily a trend. It's something that we should all be focused on all the time. Now this can be from an L&D team specific perspective, or it can be from an organizational perspective, thinking about the type of skills people need to have when they're entering a business. Now, I thought it was just worth calling out something very fresh, hot off the press, in terms of some research that I'm currently conducting about gender equality in the industry, but actually what it's highlighted are some 5 key skills so far that L&D teams specifically think they need for future career success. So we've got critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, and then equally emotional intelligence, growth mindset, and creativity here. And I think to Beck's point earlier around how you develop emotional intelligence within your businesses is really important in terms of those conversations that you're having with people, particularly from a manager perspective, and how you're showing up in certain conversations. So I think it's really important to showcase that actually these things are important to us. They're also going to be important to the people that you lead as well, and how are you creating the spaces for people to adapt and develop those human skills as we move into the future. And I know, again, Beck, you've got an example of this.
Yeah, and I think for us, we've just taken part in, we had a 5-week placement through summer as part of the Youth Endowment Fund funded it, and we worked with UK Youth, and actually what really showed up for us is actually some of the communication skills and the generational gaps between some of our managers who might have very, very long tenure and some of our Gen Zs that were coming through. Actually, there is gaps, and we need to kind of work on that and help our managers with that one. We've also just done a trial with that to introduce front of house host, which was a kind of 12-week trial. Again, taking people out of the kitchen that aren't used to interacting with people sounds like it should be fine, but it wasn't. So if you think about our restaurants now, we have a lot of kiosks, there's minimal interaction, customer facing. So Rachel and I know we need to kind of tackle this, and this is what we're focusing on for 2025 again. How can we get people communicating better? How can we help? I guess, again, thinking about those long-serving managers, we used to be a one-size-fits-all way of managing, didn't it? Kind of everyone, treat everyone equal. But now we've got this shift towards equity, going back to the inclusion piece again. So actually, what is it that individual needs? And there's fear, I guess, in some of our management teams as well. So how can we help them eradicate that fear and just face into things and, do your best? It's not going to, we're here to help if needs be. And then finally, just kind of links back again to emotional intelligence, like leadership. So a lot of our teams coming through, so younger managers might not have ever had any kind of, self-awareness, leadership training, so we're kind of facing into that now. Again, even some of the franchisees we've bought in recently, some of them have never had any of this development. They've just been like one little operator or 2 operators and never really thought about the leadership impact, and now they're running these big regions. So how can we help them? So we're just rolling out insights into the business as our kind of first dip of a psychometric to help communication again and kind of help how people interact. So leadership for us is going to be really, really key going into 2025.
Generational shifts and the gaps between generations within organisations almost made it onto the list of things that we should be looking at. So I'd say keep an ear to the ground in that perspective as well, because I think it's really important, and there's quite a lot of talk in the industry at the moment about how that is surfacing and what you might need to do in order to bring those generations closer together as well. So I think ultimately, how are we thinking about how technology enhances our human experience? And I think that's always worth coming back to, thinking about, yes, you're having an impact on a broader organization, you might be bringing in more revenue for the business, but how are you having an impact on the people around you? And ultimately, that's what L&D is all about. So I'll let Beck wrap up with a quote that she shared that's really, really good.
Well, luckily I remembered it correctly, but I heard this years and years ago, so from now Baroness Manoush Shafiq from the London School of Economics, and actually when we're thinking about kind of what we want to, the journey we want to take our teams on and where we're at, so yeah, in the past jobs were all about muscles, now they're about brains, but in the future they'll be about the heart. I think for us as a team, we always, yes, we lead with our heart, but actually it's about doing the right thing and equipping managers and leaders to be able to have those great conversations and really to be able to connect and have that, create that sense of belonging with the teams. And for us, I think that's definitely kind of where we're at on our journey in terms of this move towards the heart. So, yeah.
Awesome. If you want to chat about any of the things that we've spoken about to you today, then Thrive have got a cocktail lounge over that way, and we'll be around there to chat to you after this session. So thank you all for listening so intently, and yeah, we'll speak to you later on. Thanks.